Hello and welcome to Edukemy's YouTube channel. My name is Harsh Singh and in this video we shall discuss the feature news for today, 28th of February 2022. Today's feature news is on one of the most hotly debated topics, Russia and Ukraine. What's happening, which side to support, what to do, and people are offering their stands free of cost. Oh, I support Russia very well because I like the way in which Putin is acting, right? It deserves that attention. Some people say Ukraine is an important country, right? And these kind of human rights violation, are a rampant show of, something that is not a part of modern world. So Russia shouldn't be doing this. I support Ukraine. I support the NATO forces, all of it. Whatever be the stand, people are depicting a lot of it. But in this feature news, we will talk about the background of it. What is the reason for which Russia is invading Ukraine in this manner right now? What has been said in the news and what is in the background of it, a complete overall perspective of it. Please look at it neutrally. Lot of things which will be spoken here, which they'll be alleged, and although they are in the common public sphere, but then still they have to be researched, and that is how they are brought to light. So point I'm mentioning is that they will give you a background to what is happening right now and what is the reason for it, right? We will also understand what does Russia want right now, what Ukraine wants right now, what is India's situation, all of it in this featured news, all right? So to begin with, let us talk about the most happening person's image in the present world, right? So starting off with a quick video of Vladimir Putin, right? So have a look at his presence in the modern world, right? How he wants himself to be depicted in the modern world. His famous walk, the way he walks is very famous. One hand moving and the other one static. Horse riding, swimming, right? A lot of activities he does to show or depict a dynamic image that he has in the world, right? Far more dynamic than many others. So fish, biking, also driving sports cars, right? Driving aeroplanes, fighter planes. This is what is the image that Putin wants the media to depict about himself. Not only that, he has got a very charming smile. His presence among the world leaders is very dynamic, right? So if you look at how he's speaking to Barack Obama here, look at this. One of the best ties probably we were viewing at a unipolar world, right? With both the countries being a part of each other. Putin again, transport aircraft. And this is a amphibian aircraft. He's been riding this, Putin during his young days. And this is how we see a very, very dynamic personality that Putin is, right? Playing games here with people. Ice hockey. Not only that, look at various other kind of activities that he does. Fishing here. Moving ahead, stormy waters, and then various other things. Judo, oh yes, he's a black belt in judo karate, right? And recently has been removed as the president of this association, international association, because of the kind of activities he participated in. Building bodies at various places, in the gymnasiums, driving a sports car. Oh my God. And then shooting. Of course, we have seen a lot of images of Mr. Putin, and this is how he has impressed all the people in the world for all the times, right? He has impressed the presidents of the nation. He has impressed Mr. Trump. He has impressed Mr. Bush. He has impressed Mr. Modi, all of them, right? But this is what he has been trained for, right? Why? Please be neutral and understand the perspective that we are speaking of, right? So before we get on to the present, let us quickly understand the background of it. This is Mr. Putin, born in 1952. Right now, he is 70 years of age. Doesn't look like it. Why? Because he is very active and intensely driven by sports, adventure, those activities. When he was a very young, small boy, he wanted himself to be part of the secret services of Russia. So they would be called as KGB, right? And later, after disintegration of USSR, the forces were FSB, right? So earlier KGB, just at the age of 16 years, he said, please put me in these services. He was deeply impacted, and his father was also in the armed forces and helped in the World War II. So this is young Putin. Later he comes back after having a degree, and then he got registered as a spy. he went to Germany, East Germany. East Germany between the 60s and until late 80s was occupied by USSR, right, Soviet Union, and the West Germany was occupied by three countries: France, Great Britain, and USA. And one of the forces were capitalist and the other one was communist. And the people in Germany, they were not happy about it. So at the end, they broke the the wall of Berlin. But then that is the time when there was a pact between both the sides, the West and the East, that NATO forces would not move further east, right? There was a pact. And although that time he wasn't in power, he was just one of the spies for USSR. So this is a quick background to it. But after that, in 1991, when there was disintegration of USSR, the Soviet Union, he had to come back, right? He came back because it disintegrated, and there was also a fall of the Berlin Wall, and therefore this was the time when he came back. And one thing chiefly helped him attain these heights of success. That was this. The word is loyalty. He was hired again by the teacher who taught him, and he was hired again into services where he would be a part of the St. Petersburg mayor's office. His teacher, his mentor would be leading that office, the office of mayor, and he would protect him from multiple ways, right? So he already had the skill and tactics of a spy, and he would conduct a lot of operations, right? Something legal, something in all ways he would conduct. And because of loyalty, he gained a lot of confidence amongst the eyes of the supreme leaders of Russia, because post 1991 he was unemployed as a spy. He came into the active business of the governance. But after a few years, when there was a man in power, Yeltsin, so the president of Russia then, Mr. Yeltsin, he was one of those presidents who was known to be corrupt, right? Known to be the one who led Russia into a lot of problems, because immediately after breakdown of USSR, Russia was grappling with a lot of issues. For example, inflation, shortage of resources, imagine integrated country and it breaking apart into factions. So supply would be, a simple example is India and Bangladesh. Jute industries, the factories located in our side, and the agriculture located in the other side, right? Similarly, cotton industry. This is what happened to Russia, and he was deeply impacted by it. Mr. Putin was deeply impacted by this kind of disintegration, and that is why he calls it as the greatest geopolitical tragedy, the breakdown of USSR. He still remarks it in that way. He has given many speeches on this, and he was not happy with whatever happened in 1991, the collapse of Soviet Union, right? He also blames it for at the previous leaders now. So that time when we had the leader of Russia as Mr. Yeltsin, yes, here we have an image. No problem, we don't have it right now. So that was the time when he was brought to Moscow from St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg was known as the capital of corruption, one of the important limelighting cities where we would find a lot of mafia and wars happening, and this is where he lived in poverty with his family. But he was asked to come to Moscow because he defended his own teacher, the mayor of the city, because they would be involved in major conflicts, right? And he defended him until the last, right? So this is how he gained a lot of attraction, and Mr. Yeltsin asked him to come and support him in the power, because in Russia what would happen is that if the person is in power, that person is in power and they would be protected until then, but immediately after they are removed from their post or their tenure ends, they would be back to jails, or there would be initiation of some proceedings against them. So Putin, as a loyalist, was selected as the second in command of the political party of those times, and this is how he garnered a lot of respect. He was made the prime minister, and so Russia has a system where there's a separate power with the president and separate power with the prime minister. The prime minister is head of their legislative assembly, their council, and president is the one who appoints the prime minister, and the prime minister later appoints the council, and they all have their different functions, but president is the all powerful here, right? The council is known as Duma, just like we have the parliament here, In India, there it is called as Duma. So 1995-96, he enters active politics in USA, and he was just a man. He was not very much known. He was second in hand, second in command. But then soon and steady, he comes to know that there has to be some way in which he should be in light, right? And he had also got a lot of good ambitions in the government, right? So right after shifting from St. Petersburg, which is very close to USA, very close to the European Union, into little interiors of the Moscow. When he shifted there, he realized that there has to be some ways in which he must gain confidence of the people. So there was a time when it was realized that, all right, there were sudden bombings. There were two incidences which left a deep impression on the population of Russia at that time. One of the incidences was the Chechania War. The Chechen War, this is one of the province which has Chechenia Muslims, right? You see, this is the Caspian Sea and this is the Black Sea. Right in between is the province which is a part of Russia. And they have always wanted their independence, right? Notwithstanding what has been their religion, they have always wanted their independence. And it has been tough for Russia to contain them. But then, one of the things that happened during these times was that in 1999, there were series of bombings in Moscow, series of bombings in buildings in Moscow, high-rise buildings in Moscow. And this led to a lot of lives lost, around 100 lives lost, less than 100 lives lost here. And this was just like the bombing that happened in, this was the 9/11 of Russia. You can look at it from that perspective. Or whatever happened in India. We also had Mumbai attack or the Parliament attack, very similar of that sort. But 4 of the bombs, they went off and they killed people. One of the bomb, it didn't go off. It was later investigated and found that this bomb was planted by FSB itself, the government secret agency itself. And notwithstanding what happened here, immediately Russia blamed the Chechenia Muslims or Chechen region for this kind of attacks, and they conducted a raid in Chechenia region completely. It was shown that the complete Russia was defended against the people of Chechenia region, and there was a complete massacre in Chechenia region. These kind of atrocities still happen, and this is the place. And when this is limelighted, the Russian Kremlin is not happy, and people who limelight this, they are the ones who get the Nobel Peace Prize. So remember, who got the Nobel Peace Prize this time? One of the persons who got the Nobel Peace Prize was the one who has written extensively on these kind of wars, right? So this is one of it, and because of this is 1999, and immediately after this was held the first time presidentship election of Putin. And Putin was in power as the president, the first time president, not the prime minister, but president of the USSR. And after that, he starts to depict his image as a person who's been into judo, karate, who's into driving sports car, or the person who is very charming and into all the kind of sports activities, impresses the global leaders worldwide. But people wouldn't know what it is about. Yes, this is Mr. Yeltsin, and of course, he defended him as well. Putin defended him also, Yeltsin. So this is the background to it. He garnered a lot of support from the local Russian by showing them that he has defended them. But once it was found that the bombings possibly were planted by FSB itself, the complete site, the site was completely removed. The rubbles or the dismantling parts, even the dead body parts, they were all removed from here, and no investigation, private investigation could be carried out here. There were various occasions in which it was tried to research all this, but it was not brought to light. But yes, this particular issue where it was spotted, it was found that it was FSB. FSB actually agreed to it. It actually agreed to it, but they did not relate to the other places. Right? So somehow it was alleged that Putin was behind all this. So this is one side of him. The other side of him is the kind of riches that he has. It is alleged. It was back in 2007 when Russia itself, investigative agencies would carry out various researches, and they found that Putin is supposed to have $40 billion of finances for himself. That was the year 2007 itself. And if you look at the valuation of this amount after 15 years, it has been alleged that he is the richest person on the face of earth. not the richest, not the richest politician, but the richest person on the face of earth. This is what has been alleged, right? Richer than Jeff Bezos. But does he claim all that? No, he says, I've just got bare minimum of property and this is how I am surviving. So this is Mr. Putin, driven by power, driven by flamboyance, driven by the forces in which he would show himself to be in a great light. And this is how people have been influenced. But look at the kind of relationships they actually share. So when this image has been clicked just a few days back, French president, and when he had meetings with other presidents, they would be placed far apart on the tables. You know why? Because of the kind of insecurity that each of them have with each other, right? So if you've known the spy movies, they place chip on the body part or something or the other, detectors. So they would be, this is the reason they would be sitting this far, so that their gadgets are not hacked, so that their body itself is not, electronically hacked. Not only that, if you look at the kind of less confidence that people have with each other, this is the prime example. Mr. Mikhail Khodor, whatever his name is, Khodorsky, right? So this gentleman was the richest oil baron, richest businessman in Russia, right? So consider him as the Ambani of Russia. And during those times, President Putin called all the business persons at his office. He asked, "Batao bhai, kya problem hai? What is the problem that you face?" And he honestly shared that, there's a lot of corruption. Not that I'm pointing at you, sir, but then there's a lot of corruption in the government. I would like to have some help from you. And why did they want the government to be clean? Is because the USA was forcing all the companies in Russia to be clean. They wanted all the companies to be listed in New York Stock Exchange if they wanted to trade with USA. So when getting listed, they will have to transparently declare their assets, liabilities, fundings, wherever they spend, all of it. On the other hand, they would have had to spend a lot of finances in Russian currency, ruble. They would have to spend a lot of finances in Russia itself to gain, prominence. So eventually, this man was imprisoned for more than 12 years. Imagine that. Imprisoned for more than 12 years, the richest person in Russia. And right now he lives in exile out of Russia after having, completely lost his business to zero. And when the assets of this business were redistributed, they were redistributed amongst the fraternity of Putin. And one of the company which owns the assets, more than 90% of the assets of that company are with Mr. Putin himself, right? So not only this, whenever there have been various allegations against Putin for the issues in St. Petersburg's mayor office, a lot of issues there, or the Chechania War, or the bombings in Moscow, all of them, the people who have investigated this, or the people who have tried to investigate his kind of riches, they have not been found, right? So these are only allegations against Putin. So we understand how and what is the premises under which he has worked, right? But then he has also done some good things to Russia. See, Russia is one place which has got huge presence of mineral resources. It has got presence of petroleum. It has got presence of enormous quantity of gases. It has got presence of areas which have, as you mentioned rightly in the last video, presence of the wheat basket of the Eurasian region. So not only this, he also placed Russia on the global map because he had new laws for tax evasion, industrialization in the complete region. After the Soviet disintegration, what Russia went into was liberalization, more investments, more privatization. But before that, it was working through the communist economy, right? Just like China was. And so this is how he ensured that the economy has more rigor, right? But on the other hand, there was inflation. There was huge disparity in income, huge disparity, enormous levels of corruption, to the level that we don't know, but then the comparison level of earnings of an average Russian is far more than what an Indian is. In fact, when I was looking at one of the documentaries, the claim was that the average Russian earns lesser than an Indian. It was back in 2000s that I saw this. Right now they have grown, but not as much, right? So contrary to what we feel that Russia is one of the best developed countries, there is a huge level of disparity in the income in that country. So this is one background to it. He has done a lot of wonders, but a lot of allegations against him. And you can see the kind of insecurities right now the country's premier have with him. But previously he had charmed a lot of people through his sporty skills amongst people, right? So what it has shown to us, a quick background, what we have understood about the personality of Mr. Putin is that he is a very powerful man, and he has got a lot of assets, right? He has got power at disposal, possibly the richest man as it is being alleged, right? See, and he has also been in power since 2000 until right now. So repeatedly winning in elections. How is it possible? How is it possible? And one more point to mention is that he will also be in power for the times to come. There were times when he got into the position of prime ministership just so that he could become the president again, right? Just so that he could become the president again. So if you remember, we had Dmitry Medvedev as the president for a short while, and then he switched to becoming prime minister again, Mr. Dmitry, and Putin became the president again, right? So he has his own agenda of doing things, and it was on his back of mind that Ukraine, Belarus, they are all parts of Russia, and we will integrate them sometime or the other. Now, this is only Putin's side. Do not be partial to look at this episode. Let us look at the allegations which are actually against a country like USA and European countries, right? So that side of it, let us understand. See, when there was already a pact that the NATO countries would not move further eastward, they still did. And this was the weakest time for Russia because it was going through corruption, it was going through regrowth, it was going through high levels of inflation, there was no security, the industrial setup was still beginning to rise. And that is when the whole setup was fragmented into 15 countries. Fragmented into 15 countries. Have a look at these 15 countries, right? And then these economies, the economies which were on the margin, they were the buffer zone for Russia. They were slowly and steadily, they became a part of NATO. They were made to become a part of NATO. They were made to become a part of the European Union. And Russia did not like this. It did not especially like this because it felt that the buffer zone was getting reduced. So looking at the countries here, right? Very, very clearly, very much visible that earlier we didn't have Poland, Hungary, we didn't have these countries. Croatia, Albania as a part of NATO, but they all joined NATO. And what it led to is that there was a decrease in the buffer zone for Russia. It was only limited to Belarus, Ukraine, and some regions in Crimea, and then we had Black Sea here. Imagine this. Russia would definitely feel offended. Not only that, it had the major, setback when in 2005, the three economies here, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, all these three joined NATO as well. It had a major issue here because there were Russians settled here, and there was a promise that NATO wouldn't, expand towards east. But then they did. And Russia felt violated. A person like Putin, so high in confidence, self-belief, so strong in his character, he would definitely want to, get those places back. I'm not justifying any sides of the story. All I'm saying is that that place is ruled by one person. On the other hand, they are changing powers in USA, they are changing powers in UK, they are changing powers in France and Germany, right? And when they are changing powers, there's lesser stability, there's more stability on the opponent side, right? So committing mistakes here by European Union, absolutely not standing to their stand. And you can see the kind of difference in forces Ukraine has. Ukraine has hardly got 200,000 or 2 lakh of active forces. Russia has got 9 lakh of active forces. Right now, the president of Ukraine, he has asked people to stay back. People between the age of 18 and 60, they'd be staying back in Ukraine. Other people can migrate to other places to save their lives, but these men would stay back to fight for the country, right? So very, very heart-wrenching images in Ukraine. More than quite a few hundred people killed, and there's no accurate number. United Nations has said 1,600 people, civilians injured, quite a few hundred dead, civilians dead, right? Prisoners of war being taken from both the sides. This is the situation. But what is happening from European Union? What is happening from the side of USA? They have offered this. You must have seen this, but have a look. Rejecting US evacuation offer. USA has said, we are ready to evacuate you, airlift you from here. And this is where the president of Ukraine has said that we don't want a ride. We want anti-tank ammunition. This is what Zelensky has said, Ukrainian president. So they are not ready. The European forces, NATO forces, or USA forces, they are not ready to even land one of their soldiers in the soil, right? Russia has been so notorious at places that it also led to the downing of MH17 aircraft, right? This was down. This was a Malaysian aircraft, around 280 people dead. Nobody speaking against him. right? Or the whole Russian region. So this is the background of it, and you see the kind of extensive forces that Russia has applied, attacking from Belarus end and then from east end and from the southern end, Crimea, all of them. So they have encroached all of it completely and they are moving further inwards. What does it mean? See, the kind of relationship that Ukraine and Russia had until the year 2013-14, this was still decent. What happened in 14 was that Crimea was annexed by Russia on the pretext that people here themselves don't want to be a part of Ukraine. And this is what irked the Ukrainian people. And until this time, many people living here were Russians. They were happy. They were trading with Russia. They were trading with European Union. And because of partisan governments, some of the presidents favoring European side, some president favoring the Russian side, there was a difference of opinion, and some of the contracts were there with European Union. They wanted to be a part of European Union extension, extending their trade with them. And suddenly another president of Ukraine, he cancelled these, because of which there was a protest in European region, especially around Kyiv. And during this protest, there was, a very, very well fabricated move to annex Crimea. This was annexed, and after 2014, there has always been a warlike presence in this complete region. Before this, they also agreed to a pact. Ukraine and Russia agreed to a pact whereby Russia would give them good supply of gas at lower prices. On the other hand, Ukraine would give it the access to the Black Sea region, Crimean region, where Russia could have increased presence of its navy. So they also had good pacts, but then there was also a foul play by the Western powers, especially USA. They ensured that they were thrusting NATO to ensure that Ukraine becomes a part of it, right? So also closing into Russia and also ensuring that the boundary, that the margins, that the buffer zone gets further reduced, and it actually gets reduced. You see, when you see this map, this shows the kind of offensive that this region has gained in the last few years. These are all the spaces, blue, black and red. These are those places where there are battle groups, US missile shields and force integration units. There are two places, especially Poland, and then we have Romania. USA has placed their defensive missile systems and missile systems. Imagine, now let us compare this. Imagine if there is India, there is Nepal, and there is Bhutan here, and China does a deal with Nepal and says, and with Bhutan, and says that we are giving you missile defense systems and offensive systems. What for are they giving it for? They are actually giving it for against India itself. As simple as that. When China gives its J-10 aircraft to Pakistan, and Pakistan is an economy which is not doing that well, what is the reason that China is giving it to them? In fact, people are saying that China has not sold it to Pakistan. Pakistan has sold its military base to China. Right? China would free of cost want their ammunition to be deputed here, because it is not China's land where the war is happening. It is between India and Pakistan, two neighbors trying to grow, but China third party intervening them. So USA also has had a very good move. Not participating in the war? Absolutely not. And creating irritants? Absolutely yes. Look at the kind of problems that these countries are going through. I'm not defending Russia's move. They have their own intention. The president of Russia also is limelighting the international scenario, integrating Russian people all around the world. And in this way, what is happening? We are hiding the corruption charges. We are hiding the allegations. We are hiding the murder charges. All of them. And on the other hand, what we are highlighting is the integration or saving of the Russians throughout Europe. This is one of the agenda which has not been declared very well. But on the other hand, have other people also conducted problems? Yes, USA definitely, NATO definitely. They have not. They have defied on their promise. And now latest is that just today, a couple of hours back, the countries Russia and Ukraine, they have said that fine, we will meet. And Belarus, they said that we will meet at Belarus border. But then Ukraine said that we will meet, but not at Belarus border. This is what they have said. All right. So this is additional information here. And one of the latest things that have happened again here is this aircraft, Antonov 225. This was the largest aircraft that was there ever made on Earth, and this would be able to carry 250 tons of weight, 250 tons. This was actually created for a Buran mission, a mission for spacecraft going into space, just like USA has its own missions. But then because of disintegration of USSR, this was never achieved. On the other hand, these aircraft, only one designed in the whole world, it was utilized for carrying cargo around the world. Now now this has been destroyed. This only single aircraft that this country had, Ukraine, it was destroyed. This is how it looks like. It was also called as Mriya. It also means dream in Ukrainian, and Ukraine has said that they burned the biggest plane, but our Mriya will never perish. So they say that they will recreate the complete aircraft. It will cost them $3 billion in 5 years if everything remains in peace in Ukraine. And this vehicle, this aircraft, this also came to India to supply the oxygen oxygen generators. 3 oxygen generators were here in India. They were carried from UK to India. They also came during COVID time. So mass airlifting, and this is the aircraft, and you should be able to see the kind of difference. This is 250-ton load carrier, and these aircraft that we have, IL-76 is this one, and then we also have C-17 Globemaster, right? C-17. So their capacity to carry is around 50 tons, and this aircraft carries 250 tons. This is the kind of difference, and this has been destroyed lately, right? So when I show you in some of the images what are the kind of problems that both these countries are going through, allow me to show this. See, the people who have been conscripted, or people here, they have to stay back. The families can move to the nearby safer areas, right? Not only that, these are the Ukrainian people, and they are trying to create cocktails in bottles. They would be putting some kerosene or some petroleum, and then lighting it through putting a cotton on the top. This is how they are trying to fight and defend the city of Kyiv and other places. People in sheds protecting these dogs, right? Blood shed on the road, right? People living in fearful, in fear. People trying to go to the nearby countries, and so are Indians trying that, right? So this attempt to save themselves, these are Russian weaponry which have been damaged in Ukraine. So not that Russia is not facing the problems, Russia as well. This is possibly a Russian spy who's been caught, and he's been taken as a prisoner, right? Some weapons destroyed. These are homes of people in civilian areas. So I was actually discussing this episode with a friend of mine, and I said, this is an opportunity for a country like India where we can start selling. This is good opportunity for India, because European economies possibly will go down in this year, because in this century, because of these kind of wars, and China and India will rise. All right, a typical statement that we could make. Yeah, absolutely. But then he made me think in one empathetic manner. He said, you are based in Delhi. Imagine this happening in Delhi. Imagine this happening to Mumbai. The lives getting lost out of no reason. People didn't expect this to happen, right? So people crying, seeing their home getting destroyed. Have a look. Bombed completely, right? So this is the situation in a place which could have grown, which actually grew, a second world country, and now going through these kind of terrors, right? So war is not good for anybody. Not to defend any person, we have to get back to the basic. The basic is war has not been good for anybody, and it is not good for anybody right now as well. Who is at fault? I have shown you both sides of the story. One side of the story is the presence of Mr. Putin, who was determined to conduct an episode like this because of the lost territory of those times, old times. On the other hand, we have had other countries who are intruding. European Union countries which should have participated actively, but USA poking in, because of which we have got presence of missile systems. This is what has disturbed Russia, not defending anybody's move. But the actual stakeholders were Russia and Ukraine, right? Ukraine should, without any partisan, this is the reason that we must have the people of utmost integrity and unity, integrity and neutrality at the highest levels, no partisanship. So when Ukraine knew that a bigger, bully is just around my corner, why to meddle with them? Why to get into European Union? And now Zelensky has said to European Union that there should be an emergency provision, and put us in European Union as a part of the country. Otherwise, possibly Russia might take in the whole of Ukraine. This is what is happening. 5th day of war, and you can see the damage being done, right? So this is the situation in both the countries. I have also compared the level of power that both the countries have, the kind of insecurities they share, and the kind of history that both the countries have attached to each other. All right, let me see the comments and let's get going with the continued part of this news. All right. So, all right. Hi. One thing more to discuss, Hima, is the fact that both these countries, China and Russia, have grown from communist economy, right? So when they were a communist state, then they would not have grown as much. When they converted into those countries which had economic power, right? This is when they grew far more, right? Both of them had communist economies, but China had something called as Great Leap Forward. If you remember, 1950s, 1958 onward, they started the Great Leap Forward, where the individual farms would be converted to community farms. All the individual farms would be converted to community farms and people would grow together. And China also faced one of the major famines because of this, because of high inefficiency in economic system, agricultural system itself. And slowly and steadily, they realized that they must do away with this system, and they also started decollectivization of the farms in later 70s. And then the second level of intensification of this decollectivization was where they started trade, more investments, foreign investments were put in, and then more trade were put into China. And similar thing was done in Russia after 1990s. But this is when it had already broken. This also broke apart the dreams of a person like Mr. Putin, one of the a person who was in love with the complete dream of USSR. And this is the reason that he thinks Belarus and Ukraine are apart, and I will have them at any cost. So this is the situation here. So Hima, this is how you could see the development of a country like Russia vis-a-vis China, and then also looking at India alongside. India also was in a similar position. Socialist economy, private property was being respected, but then there were a lot of companies which were converted to PSUs also. But India chose democracy. We are growing slow, but then there is respect of word. Each of us are free to speak, and but this is not something that happens to China and Russia all the time, right? So Amlan says, when Russia kept weapon at Cuba, big issue for US, but when US kept near Russia, it's okay. Wah USA, wah. Sachin says, please tell me, air nuclear attack. Yes, Russia has put its forces on high alert, especially nuclear weapons. Let's hope that nothing like that happens. Also, Chernobyl has already been controlled, in, because it was at the Ukrainian border. It was already in Ukrainian and Belarusian border. It was already in control of the Russian forces, and some level of radiation also has been detected. Probability of nuclear war? I don't think so. Personally, I don't think so. All right. Yes, Netra. So when you see Maria Ressa and Dmitry Muratov getting the Nobel Prize, Dmitry was from where? Russia, right? Highlighting the issue. And usually people wouldn't be, they wouldn't be saved after a thing like this. Many people are gayab ho gaye, they've gotten lost. People don't know what happened to them. All right. So Naval, we have understood this. Geopolitical resources, yes, absolutely, that as well. So thank you, Vivek, for this acknowledgement. Pragyan says, discuss India's stand on recent developments in recent conflict. Oh, thank you, Pragyan. Pragyan, for India's stand, we will have a featured news covered tomorrow, because that is in itself a conflicting situation, India's stand. And a lot of people are going, that is the reason that I would like to mention very clearly, we should not take a stand based on our own understanding, whether Ukraine is right or Russia is right. What is right is peace, de-escalation of war. We are not strategists, no, we are only going to write answers. We don't have to go into the war field and strategize everything. So what we will favor is peace, a global value. We will also favor de-escalation, right? See, a lot of political parties have refrained from even commenting. Congress party has not even commented on, what India should do. They have gone ahead saying only peace. So point I'm mentioning is, when such political strategists are not speaking much, why are we taking stands, especially for a sensitive examination like UPSC? We shouldn't say NATO is right, or Mr. Putin is right. No, nobody is right here. People are getting killed. That should not happen. De-escalation of war must happen. And these two primary parties, Russia and Ukraine, must settle as soon as possible without damage to life and property. As simple as that. Because these entities was created by these people themselves, right? And if we destructed, what has happened to Syria? Imagine that, it is still happening. Both Russia supporting the president there, Syrian president Bashar al-Assad, and USA, another force, is supporting the rebels. And there are multiple factions getting formed. Syria is down. So is Libya. So is powers at Egypt. So is Yemen. So is issues in many other countries. Right? And what about the 5 economies of Africa that we had discussed? All of them. So we should not favor any side here. Both the 5 sides are fighting, right? And of course, Ukraine is fighting to defend, but Ukraine is also backed by those powers. It should not participate with them. Something like that on those tracks, being neutral. All right, Kriti says, there is a famous quote by Nietzsche. Be careful when you fight the monsters, lest you become one. Yes. Pragyan, please keep participating in our discussions. We always share it with interactions. Don't you worry. Russia wants to invade Ukraine because of NATO and use aggression to come together to harm Russia's interest. Buffer state repeats. All right. What else? Pragyan, be a part of our discussions regularly. These are, although these topics seem to be quite instigative and provocative, but then we discuss peaceful ones as well, which will actually help us clear the examination. These topics will not be asked directly in the examination. This is for knowledge building, capacity building. In case you qualify main examination, in interview you might be asked these questions about deeper research or understanding based. And largely for curiosity, so that you don't have to read 10 other sources. This is why we discuss these kind of topics. But primarily, Russia-Ukraine might not be the prime focus of UPSC's exam. All right. What else? Tarun says, AN 225 was destroyed by Russian army. Yes, absolutely. When will we get? Yogi says, when will we get S-400 from Russia? We've already been delivered two complete sets of S-400 and one deployed at Pakistan border and one at China border. All right. Russia's threat to Sweden and Finland not to be a part of NATO. Is it planning for USSR again? No. We don't know what Russia's plans are. No, Bamani, we don't know their plans. The point is just that, all the ones, see, as simple as that. Let me show this map to you. This is NATO in 1998. This is NATO in 2022. Is Ukraine a part of it? No, it is not. What is the prime agenda of NATO? NATO is North Atlantic Treaty Organization, initiated in the year 1949. Now, what they wanted was to have a collective security defense mechanisms for all the countries participating. 14 countries earlier, extended to 30 countries later. So, if you see, when Ukraine has not been a part of NATO, NATO will not defend Ukraine. It is not defending Ukraine right now. But once they get into Poland, then they have defense weapons. Once they get into Romania, they have defense weapons. US has already installed. Once they try to encroach upon Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia, then NATO forces, which is also having USA as a member, they will get provoked. Yeah, we are attacking those NATO provinces. So let's see. I'm not sure if I was not even sure if Russia would attack Ukraine, but it did. But I'm not again sure if they will attack those NATO countries, right? Russia has already said this is between us and Ukraine. Nobody gets into it. But once Russia gets into Poland, then all the European economies and USA would say this is not about Poland anymore. This is about us and you. So Russia also might refrain from getting into those things. All right. And if those things happen, then you can well imagine all the kind of wars escalating. I don't think that will happen. What about India's interest? Vasudev, we will discuss India's interest tomorrow. India has got a lot of interest, passive interest here. And we discussed in some of the editorials that India also must eye the Eastern Europe belt, all this belt, away from how India thinks about Russia. Under Russia's influence, we are not able to create our niche with these countries. So India must act in independence of how Russia thinks about them. India can do that. Diplomatic, astute diplomacy, we have spoken of those terms. And India has also got something called as strategic ambiguity. India does that with Israel and Palestine. India does this with UAE on one hand and Saudi Arabia on the other. Saudi Arabia on the other. India does it with Iran and Israel and Saudi Arabia, all of them. So India has been doing that with China as well and Japan also together. So point is, India can do that, but then right now nobody is forcing India to take such stands. No, people are only requesting. Ukraine is requesting India to appeal on their behalf, and Prime Minister has done that. All right. Neeraj says, geography divides humans into various clans and we make geographical boundaries. Universe is infinite, we are all tiny, so our minds, we fail as most intelligent races. Yes, that is true, Neeraj. When we have created so much, why are we destroying it? It was to develop and help humans, right? And we are bombarding each other here. So we need statespersons from Russia's end, from Ukraine's end, from US's end, somebody to de-escalate the war, to stop it altogether. And then start looking at integrating all the economies together. Where did the extension of NATO come from? If you want, my point is, what did you want? All the countries wanted an alliance of economic union. No, spread an economic union, no problem. Spread it east, spread it west, all together. But why form these chain of those defensive or offensive weapons? So this is where I want to point to you the solutions here. The solutions are these. Eurasian Economic Union, one of the associations with Russia along with other Central Asian countries, those countries which were a part of erstwhile Soviet Union. Then CIS unit, right? So Commonwealth of the independent states, quite a few of the nations here who were a part of erstwhile USSR, and they are attempting to create an economic union, right? Have confidence raised among these countries rather than getting into such deficit, political deficit and economic deficit, have some advantages, right? And slowly in studies start looking at integrating all these economies, not why just these economies in the east, but all these economies as an economic union. Why not? There have been questions asked in interview about if India can get integrated with Pakistan, and if not. And the person was selected because they favored the stand that yes, India can get integrated with Pakistan in mid and long term, and there can be peaceful coexistence. This is the visionary approach that is required, right? Is it right to take stand on the issue based on our interest rather than principles? Our interest, India's interest, you mean, Vasudev? Yes, India's interest is to the prime. We are Indians and India's interest to the prime, but India also, acts with a lot of strategic ambiguity, We are ambiguous at many places. We do not reveal our stance. India did not, India refrained from voting in taking up this issue of Russia-Ukraine crisis and de-escalating the war from Russian end. India did not participate in that election, in that debate itself, in taking up that debate. So India shows a lot of ambiguity. So that's fine. That's absolutely fine. That is at the level of diplomacy that is operating. Yes, at the level of answering a question, it's good to have peace of mind as students, because there are a lot of conflicting issues. This happens at national level when national leaders fight with each other. Now this is happening at a global level. This is where our mind must not be at the level of fight. We should, close eyes, think we have to target UPSC, right? All people devoid of what is their personal belief will get through UPSC if their opinion is standard for the defense of the country. Those standard opinions are posted online as well. We will discuss them tomorrow as well, right? And we will also understand what are the stakes for India. For example, the impact is not only on politics or diplomacy, the impact is on economy as well. That is a major impact. But we have to critically understand that economic impact, I have mentioned already, India does a trade of hardly $10 billion with Russia. The scientific endeavor is far more than actual trade. They have vouched. See, Russia has been a close ally of India. We cannot refuse that. These times when Russian President Mr. Putin did not go to any of the countries, hardly any countries, he landed in India. And he landed in India before he went to other places, right? Before he went to other places. So point mentioning that India has got good ties with Russia and they want to escalate this further. For example, remember Chennai Vladivostok economic corridor, and then going to Arctic Circle, ice-free Arctic after 2050, at least for a year. All those things India is going to participate. Energy participation, Then we also have exploration of minerals in the Arctic, technology sharing, India's increased presence in the East Asia region through exchanges of logistics agreement with Japan, with Russia. All these things, these are greater partnership between these countries. They are immensely required for India's own growth. So India cannot do away with Russia also. So that is how all the things have to be balanced. If there is a point that is getting stuck up in your mind, that is this, that, oh, I will be supporting Russia, a country which has been aggressor. But my dear friend, look at the fact that you have to write only one small point there, and there are many other important points to write. This is diplomacy. And what about economy? What about the livelihood of people attached to economy? What about security, energy security of India? All of these are various other points. So why are we getting stuck only at one specific place, right? We must look at the whole of it. And most of the conversation that we did about Mr. Putin, that was just to make you understand that you should not get into those kind of reading which is not most relevant. But share the masala here itself. We share in totality whatever is happening. You also understood the background and profile of one of the most powerful persons on the earth right now, right? And how he grew. He grew because of his loyalty. Only because of his loyalty. So you will grow, and just in a matter of what time? 1995. After he came back from disintegration of from the breakdown of the Berlin Wall, he was unemployed. He was unemployed in 1990s, and he was taken to be a part of the mayor's office in around 1992-93, and then 95 onwards he went to Moscow, and 99 he became the prime minister and then the president in 99-2000. Imagine this. So in a matter of 10 years, from being unemployed to employed, and 2000 onwards to 2022, the president, and what power he carries, and immense wealth, and the aura that he carries, you can well imagine. So what can we learn from him? Can we learn some important qualities that Putin has? Absolutely. If you focus on your work, if you focus on being loyal to your your vision, you will become far more powerful than anybody else. If one Gandhi could bring India to freedom, imagine what 100 Gandhis could do. And we already have 35 of you right here. 35 Gandhis are already here. Imagine what you could do. So that is the power that each of us carries. We have to fix ourselves to our goals and keep working. It's just a matter of time. So Neeraj, very well point put. Vasudev says, is it right to take stand? Okay, we'll discuss all this tomorrow as well. Okay. So what else? Pragyan says, sir, when you used to go live, we start at 6 p.m. Pragyan, 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. And we start with answer writing, and then we start with the discussions of current affairs in 2 videos. One is on current affairs, and the second one is on the feature news, which is happening right now. All right? All right. Prince, welcome back after many days. Okay. What else? I would say in earlier times, the war between different kingdoms were much better. At least they used swords, not nuclear missiles. So Yogi, Mr. Putin, he is good in swords also. You would see his videos with, swords as well. Prince, all the best. All the best. Indians are being tortured and humiliated in Ukraine, Poland border. What is your view on this? Are they getting tortured? I don't know. I'm not aware of this. Look at it from the perspective of humanitarian issue, a crisis, humanitarian crisis. They are not a part of the war, right? They are not even prisoners of war. So they must be granted full humane treatment, and they must be brought back to their home country. As simple. All right. Babani says, okay. Neeraj says, India should follow non-alignment movement. Neeraj, we have discussed India's policy of non-alignment in details in one of the feature news. If you just type non-alignment Edukemy on YouTube, you'll find the video. India has not been a non-aligned country for a lot of time. India has not been since the 1960s, 70s, and especially after 1990s liberalization. We have always been aligned to a goal. We have not been aligned to the countries, but we got aligned to some of the other goal, and we choose our partners on the basis of the goals that we have to achieve. So very strategically, India chooses its partners, even if they are not allies. All right. So a lot of insights in that video. Must watch if you want to. Sir, I read that Russia's economy is falling. Absolutely correct. We will be affected a lot. It will depend on China mainly. Is it possible? we are not directly dependent on Russia for a lot of things, Kanupriya. So we will discuss the impact on India, no, in totality. But otherwise speaking, $10 billion of trade, and that to majorly defense weapons, and India is diversifying that also. So nothing to worry about. But yes, if you looked at the third editorial that we discussed today, if there is a shortage in supply, there will be definitely a increase in the cost prices. So that will happen in the short term. That should happen. That is happening around the world. Imagine what Ukraine and Russia are going through here. What Russia is going through. I told you the first day itself, the first day of war, 50% in the complete dip of economy, their stock exchange, and it ended at 25% low. And after that, the state-owned companies, they all prices dipped. But Russia had already braced up for all this. It would have already known that this will happen, right? So anyhow. All right. All right, Prince. All right. So looks like the conversation is done. Any questions, please post them. It was a nice conversation interacting with you all. Time and again, we do have these spicy topics, but otherwise we have topics which have a lot of monotonity, and but then in monotonity lies the joy, because we do it together. We know that we are doing it together and we love it. So that is the best part about doing things together. We will see you tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. We will start the current affairs discussions, the answers that you write to the questions that I post, and after that we will also start the current affairs video. Tomorrow's video on feature will be on the impact on India, right, and how India should deal with this. All right. So when you look at the article here itself, right? So, oh yes, how did we not cover this? A quick look at this part is the fact that there are a lot of Russian troops, around 2 lakh of troops. They're entering Ukraine from all the sides. This is one, and USA has already ruled out that it will not be ensuring that its troops get inside. Russia's swift participation in SWIFT transactions has been eliminated, right? USA is also considering export controls. Russia has put its nuclear forces on alert. All right, no problem. And the timeline of relationship between both the countries is such that they had the agreement under which Ukraine had to share all the weaponry, because there were places in Ukraine also which were important. They would share it with Russia, and after that they would also be non-nuclear state. This is one of the parts. Then they also had these interactions in which there were 3 sides. I had explained to you in one video that there were 3 sides of Ukrainian parties: one pro-Europeans, one pro-Russians, and one nationalist, regional interest, just interest for Russia, the just interest for Ukraine. They were the important. So some presidents who would support European economies, they said we would join NATO, we would also join European Union. On the other hand, Viktor Yanukovych, he said no, we will be pro-Russian, and this is where the conflict got created. When he reversed what the pacts were there in the previous times, then there was a protest in Ukraine. So this is what led to further annexation of Crimea, and after that the Ukrainians have not been able to forgive the Russians. All right. Although Ukraine also has Russian population, and they were not had problems with them, but only after Crimea was annexed that things got grave, right? And Russia also recognized lately the 2 provinces, Donetsk and Luhansk, called as the Donbas region, the breadbasket here, right? And also, what are the issues? What are the Russian interests in Ukraine? Is that, first of all, Russia treats this place as one of the cultural capitals of Russia itself, right? So, mother of Russian cities, Kyiv, this is how it has been called as, right? A lot of Russian diaspora, a lot of Russian people speaking their language and have affiliations. Families have ties on both the sides. Crimea was supposed to be a part of Russia. It had given it to Ukraine, and then they were always waiting that it would become a part of Russia again, right? So this is important. They have been trading partners, largest trading partners. Imagine that. How could they be enemies? So important countries. Also, a lot of energy pipelines of Russia would pass through Ukraine. So very, very important interest. This is how they have been friends, right? And if you look at the side, varying narratives of Ukraine history. So Putin says that Ukrainian, Belarusians and Russians are one people. Remember, I had shared the white Russians and the small Russians, the white Russians being Belarusians and small Russians being Ukrainian people, right? He also blames Stalin and Lenin and other people for this kind of breakdown of these nations. He is not appreciated them for this, right? Russia claims that the Donbas region, which includes these two provinces, is historically and rightfully part of Russia. तो चलो भाई, ये तो लग रहा है आ ही जाएगा रशिया के अंदर, right? What do Ukrainians want? They want the support of anybody and everybody who can support them, because they know the one who can support is European Union and those friends of Russia who are sane, right? So they want peace. They want peace. They do not want any annexation of the territory. So one important thing that could have actually happened, see, what Russia is trying to show through this is that if you meddle with us, then this is how we will annex places. So what is the next country? Poland. What is the next country? Hungary. What is the next country? Those countries which have got American weaponry. So you better understand, withdraw from those kind of treaties. This is the kind of indication that Russia wants to give to the whole world right now. So, but Ukrainians want peace, right? Immediate cause of the current crisis is the declaration by Ukraine that it will become a part of NATO. So Russia has always been saying, not now, but sometime or the other we will have you as the NATO, right? So this is the issue. Pressure on India, whoa, to take a stand. We'll discuss this tomorrow. So what have we covered? We have covered a lot of things. And please mind you about Mr. Putin. Now, these are all alleged things. I don't know anything much, just some research here and there. But Mr. Putin, forgive me if I have wronged you. I'm a very innocent person. I take back whatever I have said. You're a brilliant man. All right. So, so what have we discussed today? We have discussed today Russia and Ukraine conflict. The parts of it are first something about the profile of Mr. Putin and how he has operated through these years. We have also understood something about the history of both the countries together, and we also understood the history of Russia after 1991, isn't it? We covered how they were impacted in the 90s, what happened because of which Putin got escalated in military powers. We also understood the crisis between both the countries. So Ukraine, what is their demand? What is Russia's demand? What has been the area of contention? What has been the perspective of Russians towards Ukraine, especially Donbas region? What kind of affiliation they have, economic affiliation, energy affiliations, political affiliations, friendship, right? They've also had a greater relationship of culture, affinity, all of it. And amidst this are the external stakeholders, see? So between Mia Bibi, between father and mother, somebody else comes in. So, it will lead to further chaos. This is what has happened. So we've also understood the issues dealing with NATO, part of European Union, US's stand, and what could happen in the future. We also had some understanding about what could be the impact on India and how India could respond. We will discuss India's stand on this crisis in the featured article for today. After having understood all this, could you look at a question and imagine what could be the answer? Oh, we don't have a question today. Great. All right. So we have also covered a couple of articles about this previously: Ukraine-Russia crisis and India's statement on Ukraine crisis. How India's statement was given, and we also looked at it from a critical perspective that India always favors non-participation of an aggressor in the internal affairs of a country, and Russia did intrude. So on ideological grounds, India should have said something on that, but India did not. So this is the update from here. All right. Some Russian spies watch the video and spam in the chat sometimes. Ashish and Netra Bhavani, I only hope that only Indians are watching and I have not offended anybody, because ruckus gets created at times. People ideological values, and then it does create. Whereas we should not attach ourselves to ideologies. We should attach ourselves to development of India in any way, right? And to the aim of clearing the examination, not to get political, right? So Prince, we are laughing because I have asked for forgiveness from Mr. Putin if I have said something wrong by mistake. I'm completely innocent. That is the reason. All right. So thank you for participating. I will see you guys tomorrow evening, current affairs, right? Do not get distracted. This is the reason that I have started to share some jokes from here and there, that you do not get distracted, right? You start focusing on your work. If you like this initiative, share some love. Also, please take a note of the important things, not about Mr. Putin. That was just for yourself. By the way, on that ground, if you look at other premiers, we have Mr. Obama. Obama used to be a very good basketball player, and then he would also go for jogs around. And we also have we also have Mr. Modi, right? Yoga every day morning, right? So Thank you for participating. We will see you tomorrow evening. Good night. Questions, please put them down.